Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the last session of day 2. We're finally there. We made it. And most importantly, we've made it to a fantastic last session of day 2, focusing on keyboard shortcuts. You probably think I'm disproportionately excited about this, but it's not disproportionate at all. Thus the t-shirt. Keyboards are a big deal, and they should be, because we live with them we're going to be living with them forever, let's face it. Anyway, I am going to jump off the screen and hand over to you, Joseph. Thanks very much.
Yeah, welcome everybody. So my name's Joe Suarez. I'm a learning experience designer from Columbus, Ohio, over in the US, and I'm going to talk about keyboard shortcuts and make the case for why you should be using them if you're not, or why you should be using more if you already do. So I think the best way for me to start off with that is to just do a quick demonstration for what that looks like. So let's switch over here to my desktop, and I'm going to ask you guys to follow along with me. So what I want you to do is open up whatever you use for a word processor, so Microsoft Word, using only your mouse. So you can do that now and just kind of time yourself in the background, nothing formal. So I'm going to do that and go down to my start menu, and I use Word, so I'll scroll all the way down to Microsoft Word here, click it. It's loading, and I want a blank presentation. Okay. How long did that take me? Like 5-7 seconds, something like that. I'm sure you had something similar on your end. So I'm going to close out of that. And now I'm going to do the same exact thing, but I'm not going to touch the keyboard at all. And you can see I'm going to leave my mouse cursor right there. So yeah, I'll just do the same exact thing with keyboard shortcuts. I'm just going to do this, load this. And it's open. What did that take me? 1, 2, maybe 3 seconds. So, okay, I saved myself a couple seconds there. Big deal. But, you can do keyboard commands for anything really that you need to do on a computer. Sometimes they're not even that much quicker. So I wouldn't call everything you can do on the keyboard a shortcut. But by using things that are quicker, I would estimate that someone can save anywhere between, I'd say, 5 to 15 minutes a day, especially if you're not using any kind of keyboard shortcuts. And that is some savings that really adds up. So let's just do the math and check that out. So if I'm using keyboard shortcuts, all right, so what I'm going to estimate, we'll be on the conservative end of what I said. So that was 5 minutes a day. And let me get to my math, because I can't do math and talk at the same time. I have to have it written out. So 5 minutes a day, and we have what, 5 working days in a week. So that's 25 minutes in a week that we could save. I'll say 50 weeks of a year, give ourselves a couple weeks off for this or that. And so 50, and how many years in a career? Let's just say we have 40 working years in our career. That comes out to a whopping 50,000 minutes of time saved by using keyboard shortcuts, assuming that your job involves computers. So let's divide that by 60 minutes in an hour. That's 833 hours. And there's 8 hours in a working day. So over the course of your career, if you're using keyboard shortcuts, you can save yourselves 104 days divided by 3. Wait, no, did I get that wrong? It comes out, I don't know. I might have messed up somewhere. No, divide by 30. So about 3.5 months, right? So you can retire early. What are you going to do with all that time you save? Of course, that's not how productivity works. We don't just accumulate save time like that. We plug it back in and do other tasks, or just take breaks. That's how time saving works. But either way, I would say, by using this, you get some healthy life balance back and recoup some time to do some other things that will benefit your career over the long term. So that's my short case for keyboard shortcuts. And the more that you know and the more that you can implement into your daily flow, the faster you can get and the more time you save. So yeah, just a few disclaimers here before we really get into it. So this is not going to be an exhaustive list. I'm not just going to do what you can find by Googling any list of keyboard shortcuts. This is going to be the things that I have found over my career that are the most, give me the best time savings, and I think will be most beneficial for people if you're not already using them. Big sorry to all my Mac friends out there. I am using a Windows PC, but more or less the shortcuts are going to be the same for you. You'll just be swapping the control key for the command key, and you should get the same results for most of that. I'm using, before anyone asks, I'm using a few tools here that people might be curious about. So first off, I'm using OBS to kind of switch back and forth between different things. And I'm also going to use a keyboard overlay to show the keyboard shortcuts that I'm using. And every time I hit a key, it highlights it here on the screen. So you may notice that I'm doing some things just to kind of navigate between OBS. Every keystroke I do is going to show up there. And lastly, the other thing I'm going to use, just so you can hopefully see some things better when the time comes, if I can get the shortcut key right. If you are on Windows and you hit Windows key and plus. Oh my God, is this really happening? It's not working. That will pull up the magnifier. All right, and apparently it's not working for some reason. Anyway, under normal circumstances, you would be able to get the Windows magnifier. There we go. My Windows key was stuck for some reason. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be using to enlarge different things. I apologize that it looks like StreamYard, my name is kind of covering some things. Not much I can do about that. And I will try to move that keyboard away like that to not cover some things up when I'm going through them. Okay, so how did I go through that thing where without using the mouse, I pulled up Microsoft Word really quick? Well, in Windows, when you hit on the keyboard, the Windows key, anytime you do that, it'll pull up the Start menu. And as soon as the Start menu is up, you can start typing and that will search. And that just narrows down your list of apps that you have going. It filters it down. So if I hit W, it's going to go to Word because that's my most commonly used tool that starts with W. If I go to S, maybe it goes to Storyline. No, it goes to Steam, which kind of tells how I spend my time. Let's go to PowerPoint. So I just hit P. If that wasn't enough, maybe Photoshop came up first. I could type more to filter out other apps. And then when I hit enter, it pulls up that app. So in this case, PowerPoint. So once again, with my keyboard overlay up, that was Windows key to pull up the start menu. And then I just start typing to filter things down. And I hit enter to pull up. And then by default, PowerPoint and Word and other Office apps already have blank presentation selected by default. And I can just hit enter to select that. Generally, to do things without a mouse, it's a lot of using the tab key and arrow keys. So you kind of tab to move around to different sections, and you use arrow keys to move around within that section. And then with a lot of shortcuts, if you add shift into the mix, it will kind of do the opposite of what the keyboard, the shortcut does regularly. So you can tab to go forward and shift tab to go back. All right, so here I am in PowerPoint. What am I going to talk about today? We basically are going to go over 4 things. Let me just get rid of this. Okay, that wasn't what I wanted. Enter text box. This is taking longer than I anticipated. Okay. I'm going to be talking about first some Windows shortcuts, what I'm calling universals, the things that you can do in pretty much any tool. and some Office apps specific stuff. I'm going to talk about universal keyboard shortcuts that you can use in the browser to save a lot of time. And then lastly, I'm going to get into some huge time saving things that you can do with Articulate Storyline. All right, well, so let's start with Windows. Again, I apologize to my Mac friends. This won't take long. The Windows key is a powerful thing. It lets us do lots of stuff. So if we hold the Windows key and we hit some arrows, different things happen. So up and down will toggle between minimizing and maximizing things. So currently I'm maximized. So if I hit Windows and the down key, it goes to this in-between state that I don't know what it's called. If I hit it again, it goes to minimize down to my taskbar. And I can pull that back up with Windows and up. If I go with the side left and right arrows, it will dock whatever app is currently active to the left or the right side of the screen. And if I have multiple monitors going, I can keep going. And now this is on my other monitor that you can't see. You can also, if you hold Shift, it will immediately move it to the other monitor if you have multiple monitors. So that's a quick way to kind of, instead of, oh, I want this on my other monitor, and then you drag it, and oh, I need it back, and I need this over here, or I really want to do things side by side, so I'm going to, I know I can snap if I do that, so that's cool, and then this comes up. It's just a way to do it really quickly. And what I like is, so if I hit Windows key, have to have it active, but if I hit Windows key and to the left, and I want that there, and I want to have something right next to it. As soon as I let go of the Windows key, Windows is like, all right, what do you want to have docked next to it? And you get to take a peek at my notes. And what's really cool is now Windows is smart enough to know that when you resize these, you want to have both of them resize at once. As I don't follow my own keyboard shortcut rule for moving things to the other monitor. What else with Windows? So speaking of multiple monitors, if you hit Windows and the P key, it pulls up this handy, very clearly displayed overlay for shifting between different modes of how you want to have your external displays or multiple monitors working. I'm going to leave it on extend, but if you're in an office setting and you're constantly going to conference rooms and you need to move your screen up to a projector, just hit Windows P and it will pull those options up for you quickly. All right. What else with Windows? Yep, we got that. Another one that I learned fairly recently is if you hit Windows and period, it pulls up, and let me zoom in on this. No, that's not the shortcut. It pulls up the emoji screen. So if you want different emojis quickly, and PowerPoint just crashed. That's interesting, and it crashed again. Okay. If you want different emojis, yeah, you just hit Windows and the P key, and you can get those. And what I like about that is it also has symbols listed there. So, and I have to admit, before I knew this existed, why does it keep crashing? I'm sorry about that. Anyway, before I knew it existed, I would go out and Google for like the copyright symbol and things like that. I know there's like some keyboard shortcut where it's like you hold the Alt key in some 4-number combination and you can get it that way. But it's really cool now that I know about this shortcut because I can just constantly be pulling up that to quickly insert emojis and symbols. And lastly, I was going to demonstrate with PowerPoint, but it is acting funky on me. I'm going to demonstrate with Word. Let me remove my keyboard overlay for a minute here. Or not. So down here, that is not what I wanted. Sorry about that. Anyway, down here on your taskbar, something that's really cool that I learned is if you hit Shift and then click, you can open multiple instances of an app. So I have Firefox open here. If I wanted a new browser window, well, first off, if I just click on what's on the taskbar, it'll just toggle between maximized and minimized. But if I hit Shift and click, it will open up a new instance of that. And that can be super helpful if like you've got one spreadsheet open and you want to start a new one, but you want the old one open. You don't have to go to File, New, and that you can just Shift click on whatever's on the taskbar. So that's helpful. And okay, we can bring the Mac folks back in the room now, or we can wake them up because we're done with Windows. And now we're going to move into what I'm calling the universals. So pop quiz, how do we get to, or what do we need to do to pull up Word without using the mouse? Do you guys remember? In Windows, you hit the Windows key. You would start to filter by typing WORD, hit enter, and blank document is selected by default. So I'll hit enter. Okay, let me put my agenda back on in Word because PowerPoint failed us. Some basic edits. Hopefully, if you got through college, and didn't know the shortcut key, I don't know how you're still not in like the computer lab, but Control S saves things. That's one you want to be hitting often. It's great that a lot of tools autosave now, but that's still a handy one to know. While we're editing text, Control B makes things bold, Control I makes things italics, Control U underlines things. Very intuitive shortcuts there. That's not always the case. And I'm going to make this red just to demonstrate something a little bit later that we'll see. If I didn't want to do something, I wanted to undo. Instead of coming all the way up here and clicking undo and then, okay, I actually wanted that, redo, I can just hit Control V to undo something. And I can hit Control Y to redo. In a lot of tools, it's nice that instead of reaching all the way up to the Y key, you can do Control Z to undo and Control Shift Z to redo. I know all the Adobe tools have that in place as well. Let's talk about pasting for a minute. So Control A is something that you can do to select everything. And that's not very, I'm not really demonstrating how powerful that is here with just a few lines, but imagine this was 3 pages of text and you wanted to select everything. And I'm guilty of this. I've used to do this all the time where it's like, okay, I've got to select 3 pages and now, okay, I'm scrolling, and it took me 30 seconds to select it all. And then I mess something up and I accidentally deselect it. And oh my gosh, now I'm at the bottom of the page and I got to go from the bottom to the top and I'm scrolling and scrolling. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. All you have to do to get around that issue is just Control and A. Select everything. I can copy with Control C and I can paste. Sorry about that. Let me put my overlay back up. Control V will paste. But let's say I don't want all this formatting that came with it, the bold and the underline and the red text. How can I get rid of that? In most tools, I'll say most serious tools, Control-Shift-V is the universal for pasting plain text. Microsoft Office does not follow that rule. So what you have to do is you either need to come up to the paste options here, and at least it lets you kind of cycle through them so you can see what each will do. I want to say keep text only, and here it's keeping it red because it's just following the formatting of wherever my cursor was. If I were to click up here, it should be black and bold. Yep. I've actually built it in. I Googled it. I forget how to do it. I'm sorry, but I actually made it so that I can do Control-Shift-V in Word. It was like buried deep in the settings, or it even made me enter some Visual Basic code or something crazy. So you can make Word, and I think other Office apps do it. But I'm sorry, I don't remember how I got that to work. But it is just as simple as you can right click and then the option to paste text only is right there. And let me zoom in on it so you can see. My keyboard is covering that up. Try it up here. There you go. So you notice there's a T after that, keep text only. And this has a U, this has an M. That just means that those are shortcuts that I can use while I have the right click menu open. So I can right click and hit T and it will paste plain text. So that's handy as well. Okay, what else? What else we got in universals? Control F will quickly find something. And that's kind of another universal one. It's great for if you're on a website, a big article or something, and you remember there's a specific word or phrase somewhere in the article, but you forget where. It's good for PDFs too, as long as it's not like a scanned document where there's no registered text. Quick way to find stuff, Control F pulls this up. And if, let's see, I wanted browser, it highlights that for me. There's that. So let's talk about the function keys for a minute at the top of the keyboard. F1 in every decent program will pull up your help menu. And this is incredibly handy. It's basically like a user manual that's attached to every program. And it's kind of strange that a lot of people just don't even know that's there. And who wants to read the manual when you can just mess around and Google any issues you have, right? But my suggestion would be, if you're stuck, you Google it, you don't find a quick answer, go to the help menu. And then if you still need some help, then that's when you ask for help online. That would be kind of my order of operations there. Yeah, and just going, so that's F1. If we keep going, the next handy one I think is F7, which is the spell check. It's also spelling and grammar in Word. We got a perfect score so far, nothing wrong here. Most people know that, but if you highlight a word, let's use Windows. If I highlight a word and I hit Shift in F7, I pull up a thesaurus. So I'm seeing a list of synonyms now for window. And if I right click on one of those and say insert, it will replace that. So that's a handy one to know if you're a writer and looking to kind of change your language up a little bit. Yeah, so that's, let me just double check my notes. Yep. Yeah, those are the universals really. You can hit Control X to paste, and that takes it to your clipboard the same, or I'm sorry, to cut, and that takes it to your clipboard the same way copy does, except it removes it. And then you can hit Control V to paste that. That's okay. So let's move on to browsers, shall we? These are really cool. These are universal for all browsers. I'm going to guess if there's any browser that doesn't follow this, it's going to be Safari. So again, I apologize to my Mac users, but they're pretty standard. So hopefully you can get away with most of these. The first thing with browsers is getting up to the address bar. And there's lots of different ways to do it. So if all of these don't work, maybe one will for you. I'm in Chrome right now currently, if anyone's curious. I can hit Control L and it'll take me up to the address bar. Apparently Alt and D will do the same. Oh gosh, no, that's Windows D. I don't want that. Alt and D will do the same thing. Oh man, I've minimized all my apps. Sorry about that. So yeah, that'll take you up to the address bar. And then once you're there, of course, you can type stuff in. If I wanted to search on a term, I could just type it and then enter. Something handy is if I hit Control and enter, it will automatically add it will make whatever I put into the address bar a full URL and then take me there. So I just wrote test and then I hit Control enter and it automatically made it test.com. Sorry about that. Just bringing my windows back up, make sure I'm still online. What else with browsers? So everyone loves tabs, right? We are all tab lovers. We all have a million of them open. You can quickly open a new tab by hitting Control T. And let's just go to a few sites here. Wikipedia is a good one. If I hit Control Enter again, it'll take me, it'll put the full URL. Of course, it's wikipedia.org. So that wikipedia.com redirects to wikipedia.org. Don't worry about that. Hit Control T again. This one will go to Google. Another one. And Bing, why not? Okay, so now I have several tabs open. And of course, I can click between these like most people probably do. There are actually keyboard shortcuts to do that. So let me make sure I get it straight because so it's Control Tab will move you through the different browser tabs going forward. And if you remember, what's the key to add when you want to do the opposite of what a shortcut does? That's the Shift key. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. My keyboard overlay wasn't active. What is the keyboard shortcut you want to show or use when you want to undo or do the opposite, rather? So if Control Tab goes forward through my tabs, Control Shift, adding Shift will go backwards. So there's that. You can also hit Control and a number to go to a specific tab on your toolbar. So if I hit Control and 3, it'll take me to the third tab. Control 1 will take me back to the first. Control 4. That's how that works. And I won't say many keyboard shortcuts are life-changing, but this one definitely is. Well, let me show you this one first. I can close a tab with Control W, and I can keep clicking that to close all my tabs. But what if I said, oh, I didn't want to close that. I was in the middle of something and I closed it too early. Oh, now I have to go back to, what was it, Wikipedia, and where. Instead of doing all that, this might be the handiest shortcut I tell you today. You can hit Control, Shift, and Tab, open up recently closed tabs, and you can just keep clicking that and it'll go through your history. At least with Chrome, it will actually pull up stuff that you did from previous browsing sessions, like days and days before. Whatever's in your history, it's just going to keep pulling up your last viewed items. So that is super helpful for sure. Okay, what else with browsers? We talked about tabs. Control F4 is also another one that can close tabs. Forward and back, you want to move between through your history of on a single tab. You can hit Alt and the arrow keys. Do that. So Alt and left will go back. Alt and right will go forward. Like that. F5 reloads a page. Can be handy, especially if you're, creating a website or testing a course and you're constantly refreshing to see the latest changes and what those look like. This might be just something you bump when you're typing and you hit the backspace. F11 will take things full screen. And I'm sure someone in some office somewhere has accidentally bumped the F12 key and brought up the developer window and thought they were being hacked. But no, when you hit F12, that just brings up the developer windows. And that's just, if you're not familiar, something handy for us developers to kind of pinpoint different things happening on the website through the code. You can hit F12 to close that. And the last thing with browsers, so you can zoom in and out. And a lot of people know you can go up to the settings and you can zoom up here. But you can do that with hitting just Control and the plus key or the minus key. You can also do it with Control and your mouse wheel. So moving back and forth like that. And then if you're, you zoomed in and out so much you don't know how to get back to 100% or where you're at, you can hit Control and 0, and that'll automatically take you back, which is handy because, you might be on a website and you can't see an image, so you would just want to scroll in and out really quick. but you don't want this to be your default setting for when you visit that site. But if I go back to Wikipedia here, a new tab, it remembers my zoom settings, which oftentimes I'll be like at 120% or something and not realize I'm zoomed for the longest time. So you can hit Control and 0 to get back to 100%. Okay, who's ready to get into Storyline? So I'm going to hit, let's see if this works. Yeah, I'm going to hit Alt-4 to close out of my browser. One thing I forgot with Windows is you can hit Alt and Tab to cycle through your apps. It shows up on your primary monitor, so that's why you're not seeing it now. Another way to do it is Windows and Tab, and that pulls up an overlay with all of your apps that you have on each screen that they're active on. So on the monitor that you don't see, I have all the stuff that's going on with my notes and OBS and the browser window for this presentation. And over here, I have some things I want Articulate Storyline. So I'm going to select that. I have a new presentation pulled up for us. And let me zoom in so I can show you some stuff along the top here in Storyline. So we have our ribbon is what it's called with our different options where we can cycle through these. And if you just hit the Alt key, it actually shows what each of these shortcuts is to get to these different tabs. And then if I can hit Alt again to get rid of that. But while it's up, if I hit what's a good one here? If I hit N to insert, as long as I didn't hit Alt again to get rid of those, it still keeps those and it tells me now what the keyboard shortcuts are to keep going with that. So if I wanted a table, I could hit T. It gives me the options for tables. So now I added a table. I don't want that. Control Z. You also notice these guys at the top here assigned to numbers. I'm going to get into that in a second. That's like the most powerful thing in Storyline when it comes to shortcuts. We'll get to that. What you'll also notice is if you just mouse over any of these things on the menu for a minute, if there's a built-in shortcut in Storyline available, it will tell you what that is. So paste is universally Control Z or Command Z. Copy, Control C, right? And then some of these, there aren't anything. There's nothing for a new slide. There's nothing for focus order. Spell check is F7, like we covered. Find is Control F. And for my fellow old school Flash developers out there, this one warms my heart that they imported the same shortcuts from Flash over into Storyline for previewing and publishing projects. So F10 and F12 respectively. And if you drill down here, you'll see that if you want to get more specific on your shortcut for previewing a specific slide, it's Control F12, Shift F12 for the whole scene. And if you've got a specific set of slides selected, Control Shift and F12 will show you that. But by default, the entire project is just F12. Okay, let's do a little bit of editing here in Storyline. Do I still have it? I'm full screen. Why am I full screen? If there's any program that's going to be weird about sizing itself in Windows, it is Storyline. I don't understand why that is. But that's not here or there. I just want to bring something in to demonstrate. Control C, Control V, okay. You can hit Control T to add a text box. Pasting, fine. Control T, and I'm just going to write something. Wow. Not that it matters right now, but wow. Okay, so I have this. It's just text, right? So let's talk about my different options for making copies of this in Storyline. So while I have the object selected, I can hit Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And again, I'll zoom in to be a little bit more clear. So it pasted another instance, another object that's the same exact thing next to it, not right on top, but next to it, which is handy so we can see that all of our copies that we make are there. I can undo that. So that's Control C and Control V. We're used to that, but we can also just straight up duplicate by hitting Control D. And it's not really that big of a time saving, but if we throw Shift into the mix, we say Control Shift and D, we paste in place. And that's handy because if I'm dealing with a bunch of objects, like let's say I want to create a layout where there's some icons down the screen and they're all nicely aligned to the left, I can just create one and then duplicate as many as I need and then move those down the screen. And normally, if I just click and drag, it moves all over the place. But if I hold the Shift key, it constrains my movement to be parallel. So either vertical or horizontal, which is handy. Let me do one more here. I'm going to paste in place, Control Shift D. I had the top one copied, that's why it went all the way up there. Move that down to there. Okay, let me zoom out. You can select multiple objects a couple different ways. So if I hold the Control key, I can select multiple objects like that. You can also do that down here in the timeline, which makes things a little bit easier, especially if you got a bunch of stuff going on the screen. In a similar way, but slightly different, you can shift click. So the way this works is it's going to select, you click once at the top or the bottom of whatever you want, and then you go to the top and you shift click on that. And what it's going to do is it's going to select the top and the bottom and everything in between. So that can be super handy when you want to select a bunch of stuff. If it's like 20 objects, you can just shift click and select them all rather than control click each one. So with those all selected, I'm going to shift click. Nope, I deleted it. Okay, what just happened? Okay, that's what happened. All right, so shift click, select them all. Control G will group things together. And what about ungroup? Would that be Control U? No, that just underlines everything. We don't want that. Remember, what is the opposite? If we want to do the opposite of what a keyboard shortcut does, we throw Shift into the mix, and that applies here. Control Shift and G will ungroup. And yeah, I'm doing good on time. Let's talk about timelines for a minute and some time-saving things we can do there. So I'm going to create, let me just copy this, probably the world's weirdest text-to-speech audio. Doesn't matter, we're not going to listen to this. I just need something generated to kind of demonstrate something. And zooming back in, I'm going to remove my keyboard for a minute. So what I've got here is, we'll just pretend that this is an actual audio file, and I want to sync up these text boxes to different points in the audio. And I can do that easily just by coming in here and clicking and dragging each one, no problem. But I kind of have to look and see where that would be in the audio, or I have to go back and scrub through and listen to it constantly. You can hit the C key and create a marker anywhere on the timeline. And you can do that while it's playing. So you hit the space bar to play through the timeline. And assuming this were an actual audio file, I would be listening and I'm like, okay, the first one comes in here, second one here, and third one here, right? And after those are created, you can move them around if you need to fine tune things. And this is cool because now it gives me a visual reference for where things need to go. So I can drag to each one at a time like that. But if this were like a 60-second audio, that could be a lot of clicking and dragging. So there's two ways, and redo. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all. And I call this the train method. I can't believe I'm admitting this. I call this a train method because in my mind, I've created a train and I'm going to move the train along. And I'm at my first stop. I'm going to drop off one of the train cars. I'm going to move to the second stop, drop off a train car, and move on. Yes, that's what I call it. No, I do not make choo-choo noises or anything while I do it, but that is the train method. The third method, it's not a keyboard shortcut by any means, but if you right click, you can say align to cue point and just align that one to the first, align this one to the second, and align this one to the third. That's handy. You can also assign triggers to cue points, which is helpful to have things happen at certain times on your slide. And what's handy about that is it was a newer feature that Articulate added to Storyline at some point. And previously, you could always say have things occur at this specific time. But what's handy about having, say, occur at that cue point is if things change on my slide and now suddenly I don't want things to happen 2 seconds in, I want them to happen 1.5 seconds in, I can change that cue point, and my trigger will automatically update to reflect that because the time code is attached to that cue point, not a specific absolute time. So that's handy. Back to shortcuts. Speaking of triggers, we can hit Control and K to pull up a new trigger. That's how you can pull that up. And along with that, if I want to create a hyperlink, I would select my text, that I want to make a hyperlink, and I can hit that same shortcut, Control K. And now when I create that, it makes it a hyperlink. So same shortcut, but two kind of different functions for it. Okay. Now for the big time saver in Articulate Storyline, I'm going to talk about custom shortcuts. So we talked up here, some things have shortcuts, some don't. You have the ability to create your own custom shortcuts, and that's what these are up here. So if you're following along in Storyline, or you're familiar with Storyline and you haven't changed these yet, you probably have some along the top. It's probably, I think, save, undo, redo, and there might be something else there. These are the ones I have up there because I tend to do things in sets. Like, for example, I might have 30 slides and I get professional narration done for them. So the voiceover artist sends over the files, and now my task is to add 30 audio files to 30 slides. Well, if I don't have my keyboard shortcut in place, I would have to go to each slide and click Insert Audio and go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. With this now allows me to hit Alt and the number 2, and that will pull up the ability to add audio. And yeah, so that's how that works. Let me get out of this for a minute. The other thing I have up there is the customize the focus order. So it's another thing. It's just most of my clients, they are rightly concerned about accessibility. So when I'm done with the course, I want to make sure that the focus order is correct for the different things that are on the screen, that there's good alt text for everything, and things that are just presentational, I'm going to delete those, things like that, change the order, all of that. So currently you have to open that up for each slide. It's not something that stays open. If I try and go to a different slide, it'll yell at me. So it's something you pull up, make a change, close, pull up, make a change, close. So that's why I have that set to Alt 3. But I can quickly pull that up, save some time that way. And lastly, the one I have there is new slide. This is just because even though I have been using Storyline, actually since the beta, I've been using Storyline since before it was released. I still do this thing where I'm like, okay, I want to insert a new slide. So I go to the insert tab and I look for a new slide and it's not there. And then I remind myself for like probably the 10,000th time that it's actually under home, new slide. So just to save myself from going insane, I've made this Alt and 4 to create a new slide. Another thing about these, let me zoom in again, is you have the ability to customize those. Obviously, you can also move where these are at. You want to show them below the ribbon. So not even considering keyboard shortcuts, maybe you just want to not deal with the ribbon and you just want the most common things that you use in a set here that you're constantly clicking on. Then you can double click on the ribbon and minimize that. And you, even though it adds some real estate to have this here, by shrinking this, you gain more screen real estate that way. So that's another way to be a power user in Articulate Storyline. I like to keep it up top though, because I don't know, I just like to have the ribbon open. And yeah, we covered, let me just double check. We covered everything that I meant to in Storyline. We're doing great on time, exactly where I wanted to be. Oh, moving things. Let's talk about shapes and proportions and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to insert an image. If I could see the chat, I would take suggestions. What kind of image are we? Oh, that's illustration. Even better, because the illustrations can be interesting in Storyline. So I'm going to imagine if I type dog, I'm going to get the strangest clip art of things for dogs. All right, not so bad, not so bad. I will pick this nice, very nice vector art of a dog. A little spiky, almost looks like a porcupine. Maybe just had a bath. So if I want to resize that, I think Storyline made a change where by default, the aspect ratio is locked. And you can change that by going to the size and position and unchecking lock aspect ratio. The way it used to be was it wasn't, and then you would try and resize something and accidentally squish it or pull it. So it's cool that that's a default now. So that's that. And if it's not locked and you want it to contain the proportions, what you can do is you can, while you're dragging from the corner, hold the shift key, and that will maintain your proportions. I'm glad that that's a default now, or at least appears to be from what I can tell. Because that was a change. Tools like all the Adobe products now, that's the default there, which is great because I would much rather have the default be the thing that you want most of the time. It's really the odd case that you wouldn't want to maintain your aspect ratio. And back to keyboard shortcuts. So you can hit the arrow key to move things around on the screen very slowly. It goes 1 pixel at a time. But if you add control to the mix, you can move things more. I think it's like 8 pixels at a time. I can see, yep, it's 8 pixels at a time, up or down. So that's handy. And yeah, I think that does it for me for the different shortcuts I want to share with you. My final suggestions would be, remember that you could always hit F1 to pull up a help menu. So in Storyline, that just goes to the user guide, Articulate official website or web page. So you can find your questions there, and usually there somewhere buried in that is a list of keyboard shortcuts that you can find. So when you're using a new tool, I highly recommend part of your process for getting over the learning curve is just checking out what those shortcuts are. And as you know, instructional designers and people in similar roles, we know that just knowing something and even having a good why to change your behavior might not be enough. So my recommendation would be, remember, you can always go through and watch this recording, but just find what you think are going to be the most useful shortcuts and build those into your routine to get the most productivity gains. So one of the ways I've done that is by putting things on a Post-it note. I'm generally not a big Post-it note person, but if I'm finding that I'm really having a hard time changing my behavior to include a new shortcut that I think is really going to be helpful, I'll just write it down. And with my brain, just writing it down, that automatically helps, even if I don't even look at it later. The act of writing helps me. And then putting it on a Post-it note, I'll put it right on my monitor, and that's helped. And the resizing things in Windows and moving things around was one of those where I wrote it down on a Post-it, and that's how I got it burned into my mind as a habit. Another thing I would recommend is just do it like repeatedly, not even like in context. Just be like, I want to remember that. What's a good one? I want to remember that Control T is adding a text box. I want to remember that Control T is adding a text box, and just keep doing it and like literally burn it into your muscle memory, and like your hand remembers what that keyboard shortcut is. And yeah, so that's going to be it for me. I really want to thank Tom for putting this presentation on, and thank you to everybody for drinking from the fire hose with me today. I didn't want to be too overwhelming with things, but at the same time, I want to go at a reasonable pace, and hopefully the keyboard overlay helped you out there. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, I thought that was great. Actually, I think this is one of those things where it's a small change you can make, but it can help you out massively. Even setting aside I think the sheer number of hours it saves in a career was slightly terrifying at the beginning. But I think even just how it makes you feel once you get proficient with them. I find, especially in Storyline or Illustrator or Premiere Pro, when, let's be honest, the menu systems are not optimized for user experience. Let's be polite.
Yes.
It makes you feel a lot more productive than maybe you are actually being.
Yeah. Premiere is the one where, I was kind of, I probably was like the standard shortcut user where it's like, I know my undos and my copy and paste and things like that. But Premiere was the one where once I started to learn that, and I started to see how quickly I could move with shortcuts, I'm like, all right, I'm going to really be intentional with learning these up front before I even form any bad habits. And I had a instructor back in college, I think it was a Photoshop class, and he was trying to explain the benefits of shortcuts to me or to the whole class. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, dude. Like, I wasn't really sold on it. Maybe it was because Photoshop, the shortcuts aren't always intuitive. It's like, hit to open the shape tool, hit U, and to open the selection tool, hit Q. And it's like, I'll just stick with using my mouse. So eventually I came around, and obviously now I'm an evangelist for keyboard shortcuts.
Absolutely. I think at some point we're going to have to do a follow-up sort of session, I think, on kind of macros and all sorts of things you can do off a keyboard. It's I think once you get into it, it's a slightly terrifying world. You end up buying keyboard switches at 1:30 in the morning as part of a group buy. It's a dark place to be. So yes, thanks. If anyone's got any questions, obviously do pop them in the chat. But I think, to be honest, there was so much to take away there. I thought actually one of the really great stuff was just the kind of the general rule around adding shift into the mix if you want to go the other way, as it were. That's something that I'd never heard before, but it's right. It applies to so many things, which is great. Loads of really positive comments in the chat. Fantastic. I'll just check if anyone's put anything in the Q&A before we round out.
Oh, now I can see the chat. I was on private chat the whole time. I didn't think I could see anything.
Oh, there we go. Look.
There. Oh, feedback. Wonderful feedback. Thank you, everybody.
Very, very good. Very good. Me and J-Rock were quite disappointed you didn't make train noises. We both definitely would. It's
if you have secret recordings of me working in Storyline, you might hear them. Yes.
Okay. It's that kind of I don't make train noises argument. That's it's a little hat under the desk that sort of comes out. And, yeah. Spot on. Fantastic. Well, yes, again, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for staying with us through the last session of today. It's been a real pleasure spending 2 days with you all now. And it's not over yet. That's right. This is your weekend too, you lucky, lucky people. No, it's going to be a really fantastic final day tomorrow. We've got tons of great sessions. There's a slightly ropey one, 11 till 12, as you're with me. But other than that, we've got Shreya Gupta, we've got Jane Davids, who I know is in the audience this afternoon. We've got Andre Jablonski, we've got Kara North, Terry Godfrey, Kevin Seigel, and Mitch Moldovsky, the ID fanatic, in a panel with Jonathan Rock and Kara North, in fact, rounding us off. So a fantastic end to the week. If you haven't had a look already, all the recordings from the first 2 days, bar this one, of course, because we're still here, are now up on YouTube. So you can watch them, share them, do as you wish with them. Thanks ever so much. And we shall see you tomorrow.